So looking back, let's say look back over the last 5 years, but pick a time frame. What would you maybe have done differently? And looking forward, in the moment that we're in right now, in this time in history, the way that things are moving, the way technology works, what would you recommend to people here when they're thinking about their journey?
Yeah, that's a good one, and I still want to react to some thoughts that came out before. There's nothing I would change. I actually do believe that I ended up in the right place at the right time, doing the right thing on an ongoing basis, just didn't achieve as much as I would have liked to. But for my personality, where I was coming from, I'm very pleased where it's gone. But today, what I want to say to you is a couple of things. I want to give you a counterpoint to what was just suggested about traveling around. Options will be hiring 20 people into its international division over the next 5 to 10 years. And I will not hire anybody into the organization that doesn't promise me the rest of their career. So that doesn't mean it's going to happen, and I'm looking for people that are really dedicated to what we're doing. But what occurred to me as I started to pay attention to Africa is that 3 years ago, we had a financial crisis in the world, and the donations to Africa went down by 40%. 40 years from now, we're going to hit climate change, and there won't be a penny left to go to Africa. If we haven't built those economies, we'll be seeing 200 to 300 million people die. Options work is trying to build the economies of Africa. If you can't give your career to trying to save the lives of 200 or 300 million people, I don't want you working for Options for Homes. So we're very serious about what we're up to and what we're doing. And that's what's changed for me, is who I'm looking for and what basis. And we have 5 or 6 people volunteering right now just to be in touch with us for when positions open that they can move in. But I think we have to take our work very seriously. That's what we're about as international development people, is we're trying to save the lives of hundreds of millions of people around the world, and we can only do that by building their economies. So I can talk more about that later, but that's where my head's at these days.
Thank you. John, do you want to go next?
Mitra. That was a very inspiring thing. I'm going to get much more practical. I see in the room that there are a number of younger women in the room. Looking back 5 years, my biggest regret is that I didn't negotiate my salary better. And over the past number of years, there has been a lot of conversations. I'm sure you've seen Sheryl Sandberg's book, Lean In. Anne-Marie Slaughter had that really crazy article in The Atlantic talking about how women really can't have it all. All of those have had me thinking quite a bit, and not just me, but a lot of my peers. And a lot of us have been thinking about salaries and how that impacts our financial stability. And there's been a lot of studies that have happened over the past 15 to 20 years that have shown that men and women, when they begin their careers, negotiate salaries differently. And on average, men will negotiate $5,000 more when they begin than women. And that $5,000 isn't a lot of money in the grand scheme of things, but that $5,000 over the course of a lifetime results in a net loss of $2 million to women over the course of their careers. So my biggest regret is that I took the first salary that was offered to me. I didn't negotiate. I am lucky that I'm working with a fairly large organization where you can have that kind of negotiation. But I would still suggest to you, no matter what job you get, whether it's a small organization or a large one, don't take the first thing that's offered to you. Try and negotiate, even if it's just a couple of $100s more. You establish that you believe your net worth to be a certain amount. Even if you can't negotiate an increased salary, you may be able to negotiate increased number of vacation days. You may be able to negotiate a bigger professional development budget. There are things that you can do to get your employer to demonstrate that they appreciate you in other ways than just salary. But I would very much recommend don't take what's first offered to you. In terms of looking forward, I agree with Kim that we are now in this very new paradigm of the Sustainable Development Goals, and so all of our work is going to be very different. The past 15 years, we've all been focused on Millennium Development Goals, and that has been the framework that we've all used to manage all of our projects, to write all of our proposals, to monitor all of our work, and so now it's this huge paradigm shift, and we're going to have to change everything up. So if you are someone who can take the time to really learn and understand the SDGs, I think you would be able to bring some value to new organizations where you're going to be working. In addition to that, like Kim mentioned, demonstrating value for money, demonstrating impact is very important to funders and very important to organizations right now. So the field of monitoring and evaluation has become much more valuable. And I can say many organizations are willing to throw their salary scales out the window in order to hire good, experienced M&E specialists. So take that with a grain of salt.
Betty, did you want to go next?
I'm a little bit with Michelle here. I'm not much for coulda, woulda, shoulda. That might make me a little bit arrogant because there isn't anything I have regrets or would I think to do differently. The one little bit of advice, I think it's very difficult to be married. And when you take on a role like this, I'm no longer married and haven't been for quite a number of years, and I don't think I could have or could be doing the kind of job I do with the amount of travel and still be married successfully. So I think there are people who probably have done it very well. I don't know many of them, but that would be... Well, get married, have your kids, and get a job. International development, I don't know. But I do think it is very, very challenging. You have to have a very understanding spouse. You know, you have to be on the same page, I think, if you're going to go into a career like this. That requires travel, anyway. The other advice I would give, and I don't know why we're giving advice, because, you know, we're always told nobody ever, you know, doesn't like advice that disagrees with their thinking anyway. But I would suggest, rather than putting out, like, this is a job I want, or this is a job I would like to have, or even this is a career I would like to have, spend some time thinking why you want that career. Like think about it. Think about who you are. And, you know, I certainly landed up in this job not having any experience in international development at all. But I didn't think about international development. I knew the skill set I have. I'm a salesperson. I sell. And so I brought that skill set to the job that I have. And I serve as executive director, and I believe that every organization or if you're aspiring to be an executive director, you need to be able to sell. And you need to be able to sell what it is that you're doing. You need to inspire people. You need to understand what your product is. Because if you can't, if people aren't going to invest in you, and I don't see it as, I don't really look at what I do as, I don't even think of us as a charity. I do think you have to have a much more business-like approach if you're working with an NGO or a charity, and I think that's the new way of things going. You have to think much more business-like. Even with your working partner in your countries, they need to begin to function more like a business and not just a recipient of funds that you're out there raising, even if it's in a grant formation. So I really encourage you to think of your own skill set. I think all of us are saying it. You know, begin within rather than looking out there to say, this is the career I want. Know what your skill set is. Because every organization, even in its, evolves. So, you know, what an organization might need at one time, they're going to need differently as time goes on. Even small organization, and there's a lot of small not NGOs out there that are looking with people who have good skill sets, and being able to inspire, being able to build relationship, even with your donor base, because that's largely what I do, is very, very important. Knowing how to sell that thing you do, knowing how to demonstrate the impact of what their invested dollar is.
Yeah, I guess from my perspective, language is very important. So if you can, you're young, take the time now to learn those languages. I think it is easier when you're younger. If you have a second language, a third one may come easier. I don't know if that's true or not. It may have been in my case. I speak 3 languages, but I also say I'm illiterate in 3 languages. So I don't dominate either of them very well. And I make mistakes in all 3. But I don't think I would have done anything else personally in my own life, but I guess the one advice I would give you is if you are interested in a particular areas, if it's education or healthcare, microcredit, agriculture, then do some specialization in those areas to understand the issues that are going on, and to be able to provide, when you're just doing project evaluation, monitoring, you can bring some level of expertise in a particular area. I don't think it's realistic to be expert in everything, but if you're going to be involved in projects, so what you can bring to the table in that skill set. I don't think you have to go out and become an educator to become a specialist in education, but spend some time. You can educate yourself. You can do some courses. You can do some training. But if there is a particular area to focus on that and develop that interest, and then sell that as your commodity or your skill set that you have. Yeah.
I think Mike wants to.
Yeah, since we're into advice around getting jobs, and I hire a lot of people and have hired a lot of people, I want to just tweak what you suggested. If I was looking at hiring somebody without much experience, and the first thing he or she did was ask for a significant amount of money, I wouldn't hire them. So my advice is, her advice is good. However, if you understand, give them a year. And in your first evaluation, ask for more than the normal increase would be. That's worked better with me. I have somebody I really like. They come to me, they want $5 an hour more. That I will give because I want to keep the person that I've seen. In my opinion, and I can speak having been very lucky, I've only been interviewed 8 times for a job, and I was offered the job 8 times, the different jobs. There's only one thing that you need to come across with to an employer, is that you're a good person to work with and that you have energy. That is the most important thing to get across in an interview. You're a good person to work with, because nobody wants to hire a headache. We actually hired somebody who on the first day came to us with a list of improvements she wanted to her desk area, and we let her go that same day. You have to be a little bit humble, but you have to come across as a good person to work with. Prove you're a good person to work with, and then they'll pay you almost anything you want. Last piece of advice. You all have lived and experienced being a student. You all have lived and experienced working on a very small budget. When you graduate, use those skills. I have never stopped living like a student, ever. So when I started options, I didn't pay myself for 3 years, and it didn't matter. Keeping your life needs at whatever appropriate minimum there is. I started losing money when I started having kids. There's not much you can do about that, but in the meantime, don't buy into this fact that you have to spend more money to make this economy healthy. That's not the way to go. It really helps you to have those choices as you move on. So those would be my little piece of advice that have worked really, really well for me. Last piece of advice, I don't know what to say about marriage because mine didn't survive either, but
So you're still single?
I am.
We're being recorded.
No. I found the perfect person to have 2 special kids with, and then that perfect person left. But I did take my kids on my trips with me. My kids have been to 5 continents, every province in Canada. They've been to Africa, they've been to Cambodia, they've been to Bangladesh, and it has made them very special kids. So don't be afraid to travel with your kids. I would pay for them. I'd use points. I'd use whatever means I could. It wasn't my employer, but I was bringing the kids along with me. So if you have kids, travel with your kids. It'll make them incredibly interesting kids.
We are just getting to the interesting part. So much that I could say about this. So we're talking here about kids, marriage, the pros and cons. I have my own opinions. I'll be at that table over there. I want to give a couple of thoughts. I think in this day and age, it's really important to be authentic, to be actually who you say you are when you're applying for a job. So I'm also an employer. I told Mitra in the drive here today, I don't think you can negotiate a lot at OCIC. We're really tiny. We have a fixed budget. Everybody here knows it because they're all our members. But I get the point that it's important as a person establishing yourself to have a dialogue, to negotiate. I want to go where Mike was too, though, of not being unrealistic. So I think what is important to me is that if you were to come to me for an interview, you should know that I have read every single application that comes, and our personnel committee has screened several of them. So if you're getting an interview, you're a superstar, and all the people getting an interview are, right? There's no way they would be getting in that room with us if they weren't, because so many people apply. It's very competitive. So don't blow it. Like, don't come and not know who we are. Don't understand, what does this organization do? What are your values? What is your pay scale? Do you have a board? Are there volunteers? Like, it's all public information. So if you get the chance to meet with any organization in this day and age and you live in Canada, there's no reason that you can't be fully informed. And I don't just mean glance at the front page of their website. Go read things, look it up. Go meet them ahead of time. Go to their events, talk about it. On the flip side is you. Who are you? So people, if you're going to say you're super creative and you're a great facilitator and you're an activist, but nothing that you present says that besides words, then that's a problem, because nowadays many of us do go look you up. We do look on social media and see who is that person. Or in our case, we always have a writing assignment. Always, because writing skills and communication skills are huge no matter what job you have. Critical thinking skills, these are hugely important things. So if people say that they can be this thing, one thing or another thing, and then the product that comes back has no reflection of that, it's very easy to tell. So I think that it's just a simple thing, know who you are, know where you want to go in a broad sense and be open. I think for me that's been very important lesson, is to just let it unfold, let life unfold and be open and meet people, but really this authenticity and humility around the process, because I think in our sector, lots of sectors, but in ours in particular, people are quite attuned to that and used to working all over the world with all kinds of people and have a sensitivity. It's not the same as just being vetted through a corporate machine.